Reading taken from the Revised Common Lectionary is from the Gospel according to Luke. It's always interesting to see how the scriptures that I choose from this common schedule of reading held by the Christian church worldwide, how they shine a light upon our lesson. And our lesson today is let's work together, the fundamentals of cooperation and goodwill. And so we have this story from the life of Jesus from Luke's Gospel. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host, who invited both of you, may come to you and say, "Give this person your place." But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place of the table, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection." And so here we have this interesting story of humbling ourselves in the sense of making a place for all at the table. For humility is not truly, as Jesus described it, about making oneself lowly in the sense of not worthy or not good enough, but it is making oneself humble in the sense of being aware and helpful to others who may be shy about coming to the table. Inviting them by not grabbing the chair first. So let these words of Jesus speak to our heart. Today, I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. A little bit ahead of schedule. Not of time. Don't worry about that. But I've jumped ahead to next week. We all know next week, the traditional unofficial end of summer, but also Labor Day. A weekend that was established, or a day that was established in the 19th century, long ago it seems, as an opportunity to recognize all who had worked, which in truth was everybody, each in their own way, toward the development of this country as it was growing and unfolding rapidly. Can you just imagine sometimes those that built places even like our Lake of the Ozarks and the towns that surround it, but about a century earlier, that were moving across this country looking for opportunity, building agriculture, building communities, creating in many, many ways. How hard they must have labored. How consistently they must have worked. I've often looked at a city or a downtown and just wondered, how was the architecture? How was all of the activity created? and then asked myself, would my back and my hands have been strong enough to build it all? It's a question to consider. However, today, I thought we would look at what underlies cooperative work, working together. Well, the obvious is people just cooperate and get together in teams and they get the job done. Whether it's the old tradition of the countryside of raising a barn for an individual who had lost theirs by fire or needed a place, and the community comes together and works side by side to help them build. Or for those who envisioned this, our very Unity Church, and did the groundwork that was necessary for this building to be here today in which we gather. It didn't just drop out of the sky. There were those that went before and did the work. Jesus once cautioned his very own disciples, those who followed him most closely, listened to him and endeavored to follow his ways. But he reminded them as they shared a meal. He said, "See these fields ready for harvest? You didn't plant them. Someone came before you and prepared these fields so there would be a harvest when you needed it." And there he ended his words. But we know, as students of truth, to read the unwritten line, that for life to continue to unfold, there are those who have prepared the fields for us. Now we in turn must prepare the fields for those who are yet to come. We each have our work today to do and to share the gifts that we have been given to do what we can. In the very early days of what became the Christian community in the first, second century, well, really the first, the communities of what were becoming to be known as Christians were communes that we would call, where everything was shared alike. But Peter declared to the people that when people were called to give generously, the intention was not that any one individual would suffer or would be down in the back from their hard work, but that all would work together and the load would be light and the load would be a burden of light. So let's begin by looking at the foundation, the ideas behind cooperative work, communal work. We can begin by looking at the psychological principles, I'll call them, the practical principles that refer to our life, in this world. The most essential principle is that of mutual respect of one another and seeing value in one another's contribution to the community as a whole. From the individual perspective, the perspective of each of our hearts, everyone wants to have a sense of belonging, a sense of being valued and respected by others, and a knowing that their work or their contribution to the whole makes a difference. To build a foundation for cooperation and community, we must each foster these elements of belonging, of being valued, and being effective in our work. So we have a job to do before we take up our work. We have a job to do before we take up our work. We can welcome one another into community. Welcome one another to the table, if you like that image. We can value and show respect to one another. And thirdly, we can appreciate and praise the work of one another. Welcome, value, praise, and appreciation. These actions can be practiced right here in our church community. You might even call it our church research laboratory, where we learn by doing. However, it can be helpful to set this example as a group. So we're going to begin by acknowledging the organized ministry teams that lead our cooperative work as a church community. Each of us may not be fully aware of others in our community that are keeping the lights on, as it were, are keeping the work done, are making the preparations that are necessary. So I'll call to mind our ministry teams as they were established in previous years. And I will invite you to affirm with me for each team this statement: we appreciate the work that you do. We appreciate the work that you do. Our teams, as listed on the back of your bulletin, include the following. Our bookstore team, led by Larry Hall, whom we all know, but he also has volunteers who help him out when he's unable to be here to keep our bookstore open on Sundays and at special events. So acknowledging that team, let us say, we appreciate the work that you do. Secondly, our children's ministry, led by Kathy Tankersley and Belinda Reagan. I believe Belinda is in the Sunday school room today, and other teachers and angels or assistants. They are really out of our sight on Sunday morning unless you make a particular effort, or we see the children coming in at the end of the service. They do the work using resources from Unity World Headquarters in terms of their teaching materials. They do the work to work with our Sunday school, whether it be one child or several, so that the children have a meaningful experience on Sunday morning and work creatively and with lessons that are planned for the youth, rather than listening to my lessons that are planned for us grown-ups. So let us acknowledge them. We appreciate the work that you do. Our next team, Buildings and Grounds, led by our board president, Lee Wilson, and occasionally by those volunteers that help him do work to make repairs inside and out, to keep the lawns mowed and so forth. And I am pleased to also acknowledge the wonderful, knowledgeable work of Kathy Thompson directed toward our landscape and garden, and bringing her expertise to that element. So let us affirm, we appreciate the work that you do. Hospitality, Jackie Hughes and her team of volunteers that always see that we have a wonderful piece of bread to break together, whatever it may be, for both our Sunday services and for special occasions, such as our Friday concerts and other times. And I know we can say that their work is delicious. So let us affirm together, we appreciate the work that you do. Love in action, a team you may not be as aware of unless you have received a card, as I did more than once when I was ill, a card of encouragement that is sent out to our members at special times of illness or celebration, and certainly happy birthdays. Who doesn't like to acknowledge that they're a year more mature? And so we send that out especially to our members who can't always be here every week. And so that team is led by Paula Tolkien and the others that serve on that team. And so we acknowledge, we appreciate the will that you do. Our next team brings music to our services. And although technically it's acknowledged that our team is Dina Dean, her mother Mary helps us as well in stimulating our singing. I look to her for a guide on Sunday morning to set my tempo. And so we say, we appreciate the work that you do. Now a very important fundamental team, the prayer team. Those individuals who take our prayer requests as we receive them and hold that in their own individual prayer time daily as they do that. And then our prayer requests are referred to Silent Unity, who continues to hold those requests for another 30 days. So it's really wonderful that we have this team here in our community that we can turn to by call or email and ask for them to stand with us in our prayers, especially in challenging times. I've known them when it is helpful to have friends stand with you in your truth. So let us acknowledge that team led by Judy Kluser and the volunteers of the team and affirm, we appreciate the work that you do. We have our technology team led by Karen Kane, and she organizes those individuals that do the sound work, not only so that you can hear me or whoever's on the stage, but they also do the recordings that are then transferred to our website so that they are available to anyone. And I checked that recently, and a couple of friends of mine, both in Switzerland and Germany, had clicked in to listen to our services. And that's only available because we have this system of our website, but there are individuals that have to do the work, ongoing work, to keep that all functioning. So let us know for that team. We appreciate the work that you do. We have a team called Welcome and Ushers, led by Linda Froling and her volunteers. And they are the ones that welcome everyone into the doors of this church, provide the ushering staff and what is necessary to keep things going smoothly, especially in our holiday services that require more of the ushers' teamwork. So let us say, we appreciate the work that you do. And now a very special group, the Women of Unity. Their meetings organized by Judy Kluser and other volunteers. And they do a special work that you may not see directly, but that is through their handicraft and their collections, bringing together good things, such as the socks at the moment, but other projects throughout the year that bring gifts for those in our greater community that need a little lift and a little helpful gift. And you know, a helpful gift always tells someone that they are recognized. So that is a very important seed work that they do to carry our love from this sanctuary, from this family, out into the greater community. And so, let us address our women of unity as we say, we appreciate the work that you do. Last but not least, we want to recognize our board of trustees, those who commit themselves to a considerable amount of meeting time and work time to do the necessary preparations to keep us going as a legal organization, and to keep everything functioning in our church. Bills paid, things repaired, decisions made. I work with them, but I don't do all that work. It takes that team to guide and lead us as a community. So we want to recognize our Board of Trustees, our President Lee Wilson, our Vice President Belinda Reagan, who is not in the room, she's with the children, our Treasurer Jill Debo, our Secretary Marcia Davis, and other members, Kathy Tankersley. Have I left out a name? No. So to our board of directors, let us affirm, we appreciate the work that you do. And last but not least, my helper. You know, when I came to this church 2 years ago, come September, I didn't initiate it. It was initiated just before I got here. But for the first time, we have a church secretary that helps me do all the little bits and pieces, from your weekly e-blasts that inform you on what's going on, to organization around the church, to answering the phone system, and all the necessity to keep us open and available to the community. And Debbie Wilson stepped forward to do that ongoing job, which had formerly been a paid position for a number of years, to do it as a volunteer. So she's done all that work in the past 2 years with no financial compensation. So we certainly owe appreciation as her compensation. So we say, we appreciate the work that you do. And so I would like to sum this up at the moment. Would all of those here present today, and that's certainly not everybody's present, but would all of those present who serve on one of these teams, as I've mentioned, would you please stand? So what I wanted to, yes, let's applause. And many of you that are seated are in no means left out, because I know you have served in your special way in times past. And I encourage those who have yet to serve on a team to consider it. I'm doing a training after the service today for those that would like to learn to be a platform assistant, as Karen is today, and we need help in that area. And if you like technology, there's still time to learn how to be trained on the soundboard. And if you like eating, you can talk to Jackie. There are many ways that you can do a specific work in our church. So at this time, we have spoken about the psychological principles that stand behind cooperation and working together. That acknowledgement that welcomes all to the team. That sense of value and respecting one another. And knowing that our work, our gift, what we do, makes a difference for the whole community. We are each making a difference. I had intended to turn, and now I will have to say it in a sentence, but there are not only psychological principles, we might call them worldly principles out here in our cooperative work, but there is, of course, the fundamental spiritual principle that stands by our work. Fortunately for me, rather than using many words, Jesus, our master teacher, summarized the greatest commandment. When he was questioned by a lawyer from among the Pharisees as to what was the most essential teaching, he gave these words: "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets' teaching." In other words, that was it in a nutshell. And a way that we may express this in a simpler statement is that we must acknowledge that we all share and are one in our source. God, the infinite and almighty, that provides all of us with insight, wisdom, love, goodwill. And secondly, that we love our neighbors as ourselves. That is, that we recognize our greater self is united with all. We are connected with one another because we are all God's children. We say it fundamentally every Sunday when we recite the Lord's Prayer. We could stop with the first two words: Our Father. We're in this boat of life together. So let us take a moment now in the silence, turn our attention within. Turn our attention within and just fix this idea in our mind and heart. So I invite you to close your eyes. And we're going to turn from all our outer activity and affirm these statements of truth, of our reality as God's family. We acknowledge, Father, Mother, God. We acknowledge that you are always and everywhere present. And we each acknowledge, I am your wonderful creation. I am your wonderful creation. I belong to your holy family. I am due respect from others. I know that my work, which is your work through me, makes a difference. As a community, as a cooperative team, we also affirm we all come from one source. We are all part of a unity of life. We work effectively by the power of our source, our Creator. We work together by the truth of our unity, our oneness, our relatedness, We invite the Holy Spirit of truth to bring these principles of being into sharper focus in our daily living. We can affirm, I am willing that your will be done through me. We give thanks that we are your instruments in this earthly world, that your will may be done. I invite you to gradually allow your attention to return to this outer sanctuary and the friends with whom you are seated. And as you're ready to open your eyes, and of all that you can do in this coming day and this coming week, I just give you one homework assignment. Working with the principles I have outlined, I invite you here at the church and here in your greater community at the lake to choose some individuals this week to express appreciation to acknowledge their work and that you value it and that it is making a difference. That can be very simply stated, I appreciate the work that you do.